Greetings. My name is Jim Edwards. I'm a retired professor of theology at Whitworth University. I'm glad to be asked by Camp Spalding to bring this biblical word to you today. I greatly appreciate Camp Spalding's ministry, its mission, as I'm sure you do too. We ask for its blessing in the years to come. I would like to talk with you today about perhaps the most famous miracle story in the New Testament. It's the feeding of the 5,000. It's the only miracle story that's told by all four Gospels. I'm reading from the Gospel of Mark today, but I would like to focus on a different aspect of this story than the normal focus, namely Jesus feeding of 5,000 people. I'd like to think with you today about Jesus's relationship, not so much with the crowd, but with the disciples, with people like you and me in times of unexpected distress. The story opens in Mark chapter 6, verse 30 and 31, reporting that the disciples are coming back from a mission trip. They have been coming and going. They haven't been finding time to eat. And Jesus invites them to come apart with me privately to a deserted place. Sounds like a great idea. A chance to recuperate, be replenished in their relationship with the Master. But as they are taking the boat to the site, the scene changes rapidly because crowds realize that Jesus is going into the wilderness, and they run along the seashore and get to the place before Jesus and the disciples, so that when they get out of the boat, it's not a quiet retreat, it's a chaotic crowd. The disciples discover that the hour has gotten late. Jesus is teaching the disciples there's no food, and they must dismiss them so that they can go and find provisions in the surrounding villages. Jesus then tells them a very perplexing thing. He says, "You feed them." And when he asks them what provisions they have among themselves, the story becomes interesting. They make an inventory and discover that there are 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But what is that among so many? It is these obviously inadequate provisions that Jesus receives from the flustered disciples in all their consternation. And he does 2 things with them. The first thing he does is to bring some order into this chaotic situation in which the disciples themselves feel so helpless. He orders the group to sit down in groups of 100s and 50s. And then in that very famous scene where he lifts up the bread to heaven, he blesses it, he breaks it, and he gives it back to the disciples. The same bread that they have brought to him. But it's not the same bread, because as they begin to distribute it among the crowds, the miracle takes place. And that is that those 5 loaves and 2 fish replenish not just the disciples, but everyone who is there. Mark ends the story by saying, "For everyone ate, and everyone was satisfied." So it actually was a retreat. It was a time of replenishment, although it was greatly different than the disciples imagined. My prayer for you and me in this season of the coronavirus, in which we are practicing either seclusion or separation from our loved ones, even our worshiping communities, that something similar can happen to us. This deserted place that we now live in, so remote from others, is much different than what we've known before. It's easy to imagine that we are alone and abandoned. Like those disciples, we may feel just as helpless in this chaotic time. Let us bring the 5 loaves and the 2 fish that we have, so obviously inadequate, whatever they may be, time to pray, time to make phone calls, time to read scripture, time to be with Christ in ways that we haven't been before. Let us bring these to him and allow him to return them to us for our and for the world's blessing, that we too may all eat and be satisfied. May God bless you.